sees the means of production, and the like and subscribe button. Can't Russia supply China with cheap resources for manufacturing? Oil, minerals, farmland? I mean, a lot of countries could, but like to what end? They do trade in natural resources already. Um, like for instance, I'm pretty sure China has like pretty bad domestic reserves of is it oil, coal, or natural gas? I think it's oil, right? China doesn't have a lot of there's one type of natural resource where China's really reliant. Is it oil on Russia? They don't have coal either. Yeah, they should have re-rolled their start. China isn't going to put peacekeeping soldiers in Ukraine. Be cool if they could. It'd be neat. North Korea is a good cheap labor partner for both of them. I really don't think China needs cheap labor. I think that China kind of has that covered. That's one of the things that they've really got going on, like as a national resource. They're pretty full up on that one. I think they're running out. Not really. Chinese salaries are rising. It's still cheap labor, man. They still have cheap labor. Like Chinese salaries are rising, but not to the extent that they don't have lots and lots of cheap labor. They actually do. Chinese labor has been getting more expensive, which is why China's been doing an effort in offsetting labor to Southeast Asia and Africa. The new China is always just going to be like the poorest country on earth until eventually a populist leader in that country reforms and implements like protectionist, but ultimately market-driven economic reforms. And then that country gets wealthy enough that they can't be the cheap labor supplier. That's why a lot of stuff is made in Bangladesh now. It's like, Jesus Christ, you're always passing the buck down one further. But China doesn't really have, like, they're invested so hard in the manufacturing sector. I don't know how far they can, like, move that down, Eventually, we're just going to have to accept the fact that, like, it is economically unnatural in a world where people have, like, human rights and aren't literally just slaves. It is economically unnatural to get cheap treats from China. You just can't get it, okay? There's no, the human species is not efficient enough that you can produce infinite bullshit for no reason that costs $1. Like, that's not a reasonable long-term expectation. What about sweet treats from Bangladesh? I mean, they'll have their moment, okay? T-shirts shouldn't cost $3. They just, whatever. It's not doable. Tim Cook said that Apple manufactures in China not because of the cheap labor, but because only China can produce proper volume and quality. That's probably true. One of the reasons why China has been a really good base of manufacturing for the rest of the world is because they have a stable government. You can have factories in places like Bangladesh. You can build them in Nigeria. There are plenty of places in the world with cheap labor that you could take advantage of. But China is like a rare, or at least it has been, a rare intersection of like stable governance, low crime, a pretty like accountable system of organization and cheap labor. But that's not sustainable because eventually the conditions that make your country stable for investment will also make your country wealthy enough that they can't provide the cheap labor that you're looking for. How are they accountable? Because China's, both their government and their businesses have a pretty like observable, reliable chain of responsibility that you can look at and you can like verify the quality of the product that you're putting out. Like there are factories in Bangladesh where you can put in an order, and if you want to like account for that order or find out how it's being made or what's being made, it's really, really, really difficult to check up on. Like you can go there and you can be like, hey, can I see the factory? Can I see the process? And they'll be like, sure. And they'll take you somewhere, and the factory will be doing something, but you don't have that like robust, consistent, like, legal, governmental, business, private partner cooperation that allows for a really transparent observational process. It's you're getting kind of like, it's like if you asked to, take a look at how ethical cocoa is being farmed down in like certain parts of South America, and like, they can show you cocoa being farmed, but like, are they beforehand telling you, telling all the workers there, like, hey, get the kids out of here, like, get the 10-year-olds out? So we like, an American observer is coming down. We need to pretend that we're following the, the requirements that their parent company imposed on us. It works like that in China too. Well, no, it kind of doesn't. It's not the 1990s anymore. China's pretty damn stable. If you make something in China, for the most part, like there's a high degree of culpability with regards to the like the process by which it's made. It absolutely does. Well, it really depends on which like company you're subcontracting with, I suppose. In China, they build suicide nets. Is it possible that you're basing your opinion of the Chinese economy based on like news tidbits that you read 12 years ago that you haven't really like substantiated or followed up on? Like, yeah, you're doing the Western brain thing, like the thing where you pretend that Tiananmen Square is like a big deal to the average Chinese person. Like if you saw a Chinese immigrant in America, you'd be like, hey, did they let you know about Tiananmen Square? As if like America didn't commit 50 trillion war crimes in Vietnam that the average American has no idea of. Right? Which is apparently more acceptable for people to not know about because it happened to Vietnamese people rather than to Americans. What about the Chinese population collapse? Isn't that dangerous for the economy? Yeah. Oh, for sure. That's going to be a huge problem moving forward. Doesn't China use slave labor? I mean, we also do. I just don't, I don't know what you mean. It's a country of 1.4 billion people. I'm talking about the general tendencies of the economy. I'm talking about like the reliability. The reason why China is used for manufacturing so much isn't just because of the cheap labor. It's that it's stable enough that you can get like a legal through line. The Chinese government doesn't just allow business investment from the West, right? They actively cooperate with it in a way that allows for stuff like product quality assurance, a little more robustly than you might get from a place like, you know, Bangladesh or the Philippines. But that's not to say that there aren't labor violations in China. There are everywhere. Nuts, are you perchance paid by Falun Gong? You can't just say perchance. I do at least once a stream. The Chinese economy is fucked. It's not stable at all. So much of their economy is real estate space. I'm not talking about the real estate economy in China, which we all know is a show. I'm talking about their domestic manufacturing practices. You know, the thing we all know them for. The reason why it took off the way it did. Americans don't know about Black Wall Street and expect Chinese to know about the Tiananmen Square. Yeah. It's the way people like your whole perception of a 1.4 billion person country is like, well, didn't they do this? Who's they? Xi Jinping himself? Maybe. They can legally hold off workers' wages. Who's they? Also, so do we, what do you mean? What? Well, it's a big country. What are you talking? I'm just talking about their domestic manufacturing. Why are you all acting like I'm pretending they're a socialist utopia? What's going on here? I'm literally just like describing the reasons why they blew up as a manufacturing economy. What do you think it happened on accident? You think it was like a coincidence? Like, well, the reason China got, you know, really popular as a domestic manufacturing base is because of like whatever. Is that the extent of your curiosity to the issue? Potato leek soup is really good. I think chat's afraid of you going down Hassan's route and they end up overreacting. I think that's reactionary behavior from chat, if that's the case. If you are so fish-brained that you can do like 5 years of consistent principled leftist advocacy, and then you're like, well, the reason why Chinese domestic manufacturing popped off is because like relative stability when like compared to the average wage of the worker, and people are like, well, what about the treatment of the Uyghurs? Like, what the f are you talking about? You mean that thing that I covered for a year? Like more than like anyone else that I did debates on? Jesus. You can't be so obsessed with tankies you become Henry Kissinger. That's true. Vaush seems to have swallowed the Chinese propaganda quite deep. That's true. USA doesn't pay me anymore, so I have to get my checks from Xi Jinping himself. Genuinely, though, the Chinese century stuff is getting a little bit more real. If they really do start sharing resources for domestic chip manufacturing, like if they, because it's especially with, so this benefits China, obviously, because they want to assimilate Taiwan. But at the same time, like with the US's stated goal of like domesticizing chip manufacturing, this is basically like a f you to the States. Myanmar earthquake, China and others step into aid gap left by Trump cuts. Wow, you're telling me that when you give up soft power, other countries take advantage of the vacuum of soft power? I'm just learning about this. Do you think Trump will give up Taiwan? I don't think that Trump will. If China makes a move on Taiwan, I think Trump's response to it would be pretty weak. Yeah, but China's been hella proactive in Africa. How the f is China doing more to invest in Africa than we are when China is way more racist than we? It's crazy that like 90% of Americans approve of interracial marriage, but we're cutting all US aid to Africa, whereas I bet you like 15% of Chinese citizens would approve of their child marrying an African, but they're the ones stepping in. More practical racism. China won't even have to assimilate Taiwan when 2 of the largest electronics designers and producers work with them. Well, they'll still want to for like nationalist purposes. The most fucked up outcome of all of this, potentially, is if Trump is so uncooperative with protecting Taiwan, so like faux isolationist that he won't even signal defense, that the Taiwanese people start drifting towards China for protection. That would be the like most fucked up outcome. You have basically like a Hong Kong 2 situation where the Taiwanese people are like, you know, what, one country, 2 systems? Like, please, we can't defend ourselves against you, so we might as well like kowtow, protection from China? Well, yes. Yeah, they would essentially like accept being a vassal state, right? Many there would sooner die. Yeah, but it always starts that way, right? The US, once among the biggest providers of foreign aid, has been really slow to act, with a modest pledge of $2 million announced on Sunday. Jesus, that's like nothing. $2 million. Why the f does CCP want Taiwan so bad? Because Taiwan is like the one that got away for the Chinese Communist Party's national founding myth. Like, Taiwan literally was the escapee island that the old government escaped to, along with their supporters and their military, so on and so on. It's not about, like, in a practical sense, securing the South China Sea. At least that's not the main thing. The main thing is that it's the national myth, you know? Like, a good way of putting it would be, imagine if the Civil War happened, and then the Confederate government, like, escaped to Cuba and then took over Cuba, and then insisted that it was the real America, and it called itself like the Confederate State of America. And meanwhile, the mainland of America became like, it was the Union, the North Winds, Reconstruction for a few years, whatever. And meanwhile, Cuba existed as like an argued parallel country. You know? Yeah, we call that Florida. I wish we could cut Florida off and make it an island. Yeah, and the rest of the world recognized Cuba as the real America for a while, you know? That would probably piss you off a little bit, right? If, like, you went to the UN and a bunch of people were like, hello, fake America, controlled by the Union, Union-controlled America. Oh, hello, Cuba, aka the new America, or whatever. I can see China having a chip on its shoulder over it.